Okay, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Nix podcast from start to finish. We are honored to be here in East Pete's. Is that
East
right?
Pete, that's how they say here. East Pete.
We're in East Petersburg, Pennsylvania. And we woke up to the smell of cows this morning and thought, we're not in Spokane. And
That happens here.
and today we are, I will say we're honored to be visiting with Marcell Mrsan.
Mrsan.
Yeah. And, I think, on Instagram, you're always looking up, boot content. And I think the one that got me was you're hand welting. Probably, I don't know if it was this shoe exactly, but I just remember pausing and thinking, okay, this guy's a shoemaker. And then I went on your profile and I was like, this guy is a real shoemaker. And I said, we should probably reach out to him. Oh, and I think the first correspondence we had was really about, I think I saw you on the Adler 888. And I was like, hey, we're having a hard time finding post machines.
They let these guys use that machine. Oh my God.
And then you said, oh, you need to, talk to Dan at Cannibal Randall, the Adler 888. We'll have to review, but I think that was the first question I asked was what sewing machines do you
Really?
have?
Okay.
So,
that was recently, actually.
Yeah, we'll have to look. I think it was probably 2020.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyways, we're honored to be here. So we'll just kind of start with some questions and we'll get into it. So who are you? Who is Marcell?
Well, thank you for being here, first of all. So I'm honored to have you here. So who's Marcell Mrsan? One of the big questions in life, right? Who are you? So I have many hats, but here I think I should wear the shoemaker one. Mm-hmm. And that's a little bit more than just a shoemaker. So I am a traditional shoemaker, like probably should be illustration of shoemaker being who I am, because coming from a family of shoemakers, 6 generations in the trade, which is an estimate because that's what I can prove.
Yeah.
Probably it's more. But I mean, everybody has some shoemakers in the family, so that doesn't make me any better. It sounds good though.
Yeah.
But I went to a shoemaking school when I was 14, made my first pair of shoes at that time, and then finished that school.
And where was that?
That was in Hungary, Budapest, Hungary.
Okay.
We had this leather district back then in Budapest. So just in that street I went to school. They had I think 2 or 3 tanneries. Okay. You can tell those tanneries by the smell really well.
Yeah.
A big shoe factory.
Okay.
Made shoes for military and then for the street. Hungary shoe industry was big because they made shoes for the Soviet Union. They purchased pretty much everything what they could make. So it was I think 7 times more than the population of the country back then.
Wow.
That was quite something.
So was Hungary the hub for shoemaking for the Soviet Union?
Well, you heard that from a lot of countries, but it's certainly the shoe industry was big. In a day, in 100 and something years ago, 20 years ago, Hungary was still part of the monarchy with Austria.
Okay.
And there was this very strong and healthy competition between Vienna and Budapest.
Okay.
So that elevated the trade to a really nice level. So check the shoes back in those days, and it was amazing quality.
Okay.
And so I wouldn't say that we were a hub for that, but we made many million pairs of shoes back then.
And what prompted you to walk into a shoemaking school at 14?
I was tricked.
Okay.
So I wasn't aware of the family tradition because the family was leather crafters and shoemakers, but I wasn't aware of it. I mean, a 14 years old kid, I mean, what do I care at that point? I loved shoes, so I was sketching shoes all the time, but I wasn't aware of the family tradition. So I wanted to actually do something totally different. And my mom was just casually asked me that, why don't you think about me, I don't know, shoemaking?
Okay.
Then, well, actually sounds cool. So I looked into that, I really loved it. Well, YouTube wasn't around at that point, but Budapest had a lot of little workshops.
Okay.
So I looked around and said, this is something really cool. I want to do this.
Yeah.
So I remember before I went to school, I made these crappy jeans shoes back home. I had no idea how to make those.
Yeah.
And when I went to school, I was really excited to do that. Then it hit me that actually it wasn't that random because the family has a history in shoemaking.
Okay.
But, communism, that's kind of wiped out the little workshops more or less. So there was a couple of them left here and there, but Most of them are gone, including
Yeah.
the Coronia workshop, which was my family.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting, that you mentioned that you can prove 6 or 7 generations.
I
Or
said 6 because it's
yeah.
150 years each. So I said,
Okay.
let's make it 6. So
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of it's interesting. I think some modern shoe brands, it's people get into the footwear industry and then they say, "Oh, and it turns out my grandfather was something and my
mhm.
great grandfather was something." And that's kind of the narrative of why they're the expert, now. And
Yeah, that's
but in your
fake.
case, you've got, you've got photos, you've got tools. I mean, you are probably a premier collector of old tools, I'm guessing. I
You
mean,
can say that.
so it's not just a nice branding story. It's a real story of, tradition.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, so I'm saying this as I would say, 6th generation. It doesn't matter. It's not in your genes. Just
Yeah.
because your grandfather was a shoemaker or great grandfather, or all of them, it's not genetic. So you have to
Yeah.
learn the trade.
Right.
If you are not that good, not that talented in this, you can still learn it, of course. But just because many generations back there were shoemakers, you still have to learn everything. You have to practice everything. You have to, you should love this thing.
Yeah.
And family traditions, they don't help a bit.
Right.
I mean, of
Right.
course, they help if you own like 1,000 tools from your grandfather. That helps a
Right.
lot.
Right.
But in your skills, it doesn't matter.
Right. Right. So let's talk about, I mean, a couple terms that we throw around. One is a cordwainer, and then a lot of people don't know that term. And then they'll also say, well, he's a master bootmaker or master shoemaker. Can you talk a little bit about what those mean?
Okay, so yeah, these are terms they throw it around and they don't know where it's coming from. So let's start with cordwainer.
Yeah.
Okay, so cordwainer is coming from the city name Cordoba
Mm-hmm.
in Spain. And Cordoba was famous about, first actually wasn't horse leather, interestingly.
Mm-hmm.
It was a specific type of tanning and a red leather. I
Okay.
think kid skin, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
And that was the Cordovan in that point.
Okay.
And that is somehow in history it's turned to be a horse butt. We say Cordovan because it sounds a lot better than horse butt shoe.
Yeah.
So probably it's a better marketing value.
Yeah.
So cordwainer is the person who works with Cordovan.
Okay.
So those fancy shoes. And to be honest, shoemaking was never one trade. It was
Okay.
many different trades coming together.
Okay.
And the leather society had different traditions, different shoe types.
Mm-hmm.
For example, some of them still did not came together. Like a
Okay.
Western bootmaker and shoemaker, that's two very different trade.
Okay.
Riding bootmaker, also very different trade. Something which is almost forgotten, the turn shoes, the ballet shoes, for example.
Oh, right.
Regular shoemakers cannot make ballet shoes.
Right,
That's like a
right.
whole different story. So back in the day, there were even more. Tanners were allowed. When I say allowed, there were guilds, right?
Okay, right.
So guilds allowed them to make one specific type of shoe.
Okay.
And shoemakers were not allowed to make that kind of shoe.
Okay.
Only the tanners.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
the trade was really complex, and everybody had some kind of specialization.
Right.
And the cordwainers were the fine city shoemakers
Okay.
making people for this higher society. So not the cobblers and not the bootmakers for the peasants or.
So what is a cordwainer? Is it somebody that just deals with the cordovan, or it's specific?
No, it's a shoemaker. It's a fancy way to say shoemaker.
Okay.
But when you say shoemaker, people automatically think that you repair shoes, which I don't.
Right.
So
right.
when I say shoemaker, so I have this Italian handmade shoe, and would you know?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
but you're a shoemaker, yes, shoemaker,
Right.
not
Yeah.
repairer. But that's a shoemaker. No, it's not a shoemaker. It's
Right.
a cobbler. It's an ongoing conversation, and any shoemaker had this conversation probably a million times.
Right.
And it's just difficult to communicate. So some people just I'm cordwainer. I don't say that.
Right.
I'm okay with the term shoemaker, but that's kind of, I think that's the fancy way to say that I'm not going to repair your shoes.
Okay. Okay. And then is it fair to say, as a shoemaker, you're building the foundation of the shoe that can more or less be repaired by somebody with less skill, a cobbler?
Yeah, you make a new shoes. So
Right.
you make new pair of shoes. So
But
shoemakers.
you need to build a good foundation of the footwear so that a cobbler can then repair it later.
We try to do our best, not because to accommodate the cobblers, but there are certainly constructions where it's a lot easier than others.
Okay.
So if you compare these type of welted shoes or any shoes what we make to you know, they're going to be in service for decades usually. If they are repaired, and how they can be repaired. So regular, quote unquote, regular factory shoes, they last it, which means that shape it around the last. They put it on the insole with some kind of cement.
Okay.
So the adhesion is the only mechanical bonding between the layers. And they kind of sand the layers pretty thin. So when you put the sole on it, the leftover leather might be just fraction of a millimeter,
Right.
which at this point doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But when you rip off the sole, that's going to rip off that fraction of a millimeter.
Right, right.
So what you have left might not be repairable.
Right, right.
Our shoes, there's no such thing.
Right.
So we stitch everything, we nail everything, well, like just like you guys. I mean, everything is sturdy. If you take good care of that shoe, it's going to be shoe forever.
I see, I see. Then let's go back to this term master.
Okay, master.
What is a master?
Okay, so let's start with the misconception of the master. Okay, so people tend to think that after watching a bunch of kung fu movies, that master is someone who can do a backflip and stitch 64 stitches per inch bare hand before breakfast, but that's not what it means.
Yeah.
The master term is experienced craftsman who can teach. So the master is really the teacher.
Okay.
And the master degree, which I have, is actually a teaching degree.
Okay.
So the set of exams which I went through, half of them was about teaching.
I see.
Psychology, teaching, and just passing down the trade.
Yeah.
So, of course, the skills are very important. And you have to have, I don't know how many percentage of the questions you get it right. But many of those questions are actually how to operate a workshop, how to teach, how to handle people, how to handle difficult people. And it's really just the fact that you are allowed to teach. So it's an old word, teaching degree. Let's put it this way.
Okay. Okay. Tell us a little bit about what you do here. You have an online business, and then you've also got this incredible workshop. Tell us a bit about.
Yeah. So what do I do? So I am what you see from my Instagram. I teach a lot. I love teaching. I that's pretty much my life these days. And that's kind of why it come in during the pandemic. So the online teaching was the good way to survive and do something. So I have this beautiful workshop, and you can see a lot about this workshop in my Instagram. I do a lot of bespoke work, which is, to be honest, the facade. I wouldn't be able to feed the family from bespoke.
Right, right.
But that's important for me, and it's important because that's a challenge.
Yeah.
Shoemaking, especially on that level, is you always just one sloppy move away to mess up your work.
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes you make something like really, really complex, very expensive materials, alligator, whatever else, and then you work a week on that one piece, and it's just one sloppy move to cut badly that thing.
Right.
So that's a challenge.
Yeah.
So bespoke in that case is like I wouldn't say meditation because it's very practical, but it's certainly a challenge.
Okay.
What I do more, I do a lot of trainings, individuals, corporates, groups. I tend to do that actually more. So I reached out to the local prison if they want to have the prisoners to have a trade in their hands. And we had actually a good conversation, and I hope it's going to continue. And then we can do something with that because it's something giving back to the community.
Right,
okay. Right. What else? I do product development. Come as a surprise.
Yeah.
A lot of pattern making. I just want to learn everything about shoes, what I can.
Yeah, yeah.
And the pattern making was a little bit later than the actual shoemaking education.
Oh, okay.
And I learned several softwares. Recently, I use one specific one. If you don't mind me to say the name.
Yeah.
It's called Caligula. It's not the emperor, but the footwear style.
Okay.
And that software is really brilliant for grading, which is a very complex engineering topic. I wrote a book about it. That kind of puts my name out there. That's a way to pass down the knowledge. So, and that's a lot of companies needs that. Because there's not many more pattern engineers are around in this country. So that's useful. And then whatever else I can do. We do a family business here, a little web shop, sell shoemaking supplies.
Yeah, an awesome resource. I mean, you guys.
Well, thank you.
I think even over the past 2 years, you know, you've added so much, you know, so many new
We try to do our
tools,
best.
and oh yeah, it's
People
incredible.
actually accept it really well because I know how to use those tools,
Right,
and I don't sell anything which I would not use.
right, right.
And you know where it started actually?
What?
It's a really funny story. So I had back in 2000, I don't know, I would say 5, 7. I had some students in my workshop, and I did not sell anything at that point.
Yeah.
And one of the kid, it was a nice kid. I really like him. We're still in contact. He broke 3 awls in like an hour for welting. And I was like, you know what, it's breaking my awls. What the hell I'm gonna do? So I decided that I'm gonna find a local iron worker
Yeah.
to make me new awls.
Okay.
So he did a good job. He made amazing awls. I still have some of them.
Yeah.
And he made like 20. I was like, okay, I'm gonna find with awls.
Yeah.
And then they finished the course, and can we buy some of those? And okay. So I went back to the guy and can you make me more maybe from these awls? And little by little, I realized that I have a lot of supplies only for my student first.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Then I said, you know, well, this could be actually a good business. Why don't we do this?
Yeah.
And then every single student from that point, they just walked away with new tools.
Right.
The old ones just somehow they stick to my workshop. I don't know how.
Yeah. Well, if it fits a market need, because you're either looking for old tools that were made well, or there's a lot of cheap, junk out there,
God, yeah,
so you're providing tools that are good quality, that aren't necessarily antique, but aren't absolutely junk where you're going to be breaking your awls.
They're as good as the antique ones.
Yeah.
Because the antiques are really nice. But the problem is, the metal, just like we do, getting older, rusty, gets sometimes broken easily. And new tools, the problem is that makers don't understand the function of the tool.
Right.
They copy what they see, but if they don't understand the detail, they're not going to bother with that detail.
Right.
Some of my tools actually made by earring.
Yeah.
And that doesn't say a lot to you, but earring was probably one of the best tool maker I ever heard of. This guy went to a shoemaking school to learn shoemaking.
Yeah.
So he can make better tools.
Wow. Yeah.
And that is something I can really respect. So if I see an earring tool, I buy it and keep it.
That's an antique, or
it's an antique.
Okay, those are. And where was he from?
Hungary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
I just take a look at the tool and can tell where the tool is from.
Yeah. What are the major? We're all on these forums, and there's a lot of experts out there.
Oh yeah.
This is kind of a broad question, but what are some of the major misconceptions about, shoemaking or boot making that you see out there?
Oh, where do I start? So, so what is the expert actually in the trade? So there are a bunch of people on forums who have seen some shoes close, and maybe even a shoemaker making something.
Yeah.
And they tend to believe that they have seen a shoemaker. They might participate in a week-long course, and they blog about shoes maybe even. They gotta be experts.
Right.
Okay. And the problem is when these people actually really express opinion about something which is factually wrong.
Right. Yeah.
And I gave up the forum fights a long time ago because it's a waste of my energy. I'm not gonna convince anyone about anything. But there's a lot of things which is out there, and I could fight with that, and I don't do that because I did that fight many times. I don't want to do that. Funny thing is Norwegian welt. Have you heard about Norwegian welts?
I've heard, yeah. I'm an expert on Norwegian welts, as a matter of fact.
Okay, there's no such thing as Norwegian welt.
That is a total joke, everyone.
So Norwegian is a technology without a welt.
Right.
It's almost like a stitch down, but there's no welt. And that's a very classic, very nice looking shoe. But if it has a welt, it's not a Norwegian anymore, even if it's called like that.
Right.
But it's like the entree.
Yeah.
The entree in this country. Because when I came, entree, what is entree? I mean, what is the main dish? And the entree, that's just enter is not, whatever.
Yeah.
I learned my lesson, that's the main dish. But Norwegian welt is not a thing. Geyser welt,
right?
That's a thing. So that's a kind of reverse welt, very sturdy construction, beautiful looking shoe, very traditional in Hungary and Austria actually. German customers love it. I started my career making those, and that's one of those. And many misconceptions about the bespoke. What is bespoke?
Right.
The funny thing is nobody really knows.
Right.
Everybody has an opinion about it.
Right.
There are lawsuits about it.
Yeah.
But what is bespoke?
Yeah.
Guess. So people think that bespoke, when you take a piece of wood, carve it out by hand, that's going to be the last. You make a specific pattern for that last, and you make everything by hand except the sewing machine on the upper.
Yeah.
That's one way to understand it.
Okay.
And some people are very, very opinionated to say that this is the only way and that's bespoke.
Right.
And I would ask, what's wrong if you have the last fitting perfectly
Right.
and you don't have to do anything, maybe add a little bit of a leather here and there?
Right.
Is it bespoke or not bespoke?
Right. Right.
If you use a synthetic glue instead of a paste.
Right.
So it's a range of things, I believe. And to be honest, about just because of this, I avoid to say bespoke. I even avoid to say handmade, because that's another
right.
pit of hell.
Yeah.
I just get my customers, roughly spend 2.5 hours with each, show them around, explain, and they can decide if they consider this handmade or not. They usually do. But these are terminologies, and terminologies are usually don't learn from forums. That's my advice.
Right.
All wrong in there. So.
Yeah, I mean, I could, hundreds of comments. We have a lot of YouTube videos out there, and every video there's no way that's handmade. He's using a belt sander, or I think the best one recently was, we rip the boots apart when we rebuild them. We grab them with, horseshoe tongs, and we rip it. And that was one of the comments, was this isn't handmade because he's using a, and then, a lot of people joked around, like, how else would you do it? Like, could you imagine clawing off, soles to resole a boot or whatever? So there, it is interesting. There's a lot of experts out there. There's a lot of misconceptions. Let's talk briefly about stitch down. That's, that's what we do. I did pull the plug a little bit on hand welting about 4 years ago, because I would have this conversation with customers. And again, this is a pretty blue collar logging wildland fire. And I would say, well, the hand welted version is about $45 more. And they would say, what is that? And I would explain, well, we take an awl, and we take thread, and we take a welt. And he would say, I don't have any idea what that means. I just want a durable boot. And I'd say, well, would you be okay with a stitch down? And they'd say, well, what's a stitch down? Well, we take the vamp, and we take the, and ultimately at the end of the day, a lot of people didn't care about this terminology. They just wanted a boot that was durable. Can you talk about, pros and cons of stitch down construction?
Okay, so first of all, let me address this first, because the customer education is something which is kind of our fault. Yeah. And if half of the TV shows would exist about boot and shoemaking, then baking cakes would be great.
That's right.
Position.
Yeah.
That we don't have to spend that much time educating customers, because back in the day, 100 years ago, customers were very much aware of leather, for example.
Yeah.
These days, leather, brown leather.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Right.
And that's a huge difference between leathers. I mean, there are roughly 40 different types of leather which can come into picture when we talk about shoes.
Right.
And that's not the whole list. And customer will know that, it's coming from some animals, right? Maybe cow or pig or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's bad.
Yeah.
And the construction, what you mentioned, there are roughly 300, 400-ish construction out there for shoes.
Wow.
Handmade, there's roughly 20 of them out there, which I can do.
Yeah.
And most of the shoe bootmakers know maybe 1, 2, or 3.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as they do it right and they specify. So they're very specialized on one technique, and they're doing it excellent. That's amazing.
Yeah.
In terms of straight diversity, might not be that good, but as long as there are enough makers, that's okay.
Right.
So stitch down is a construction where there are many versions of stitch down, by the way.
Okay, yeah.
But the way that you guys do it, stitch down is one construction which the upper stitch to the midsole, and it's technically waterproof as long as the upper. There's no such thing as waterproof shoe, by the way.
Right.
Water resistant for a long time, that exists.
Yeah.
But it's actually a sturdy construction. A goizer is a kind of a version of it with an extra welt on the top. And there's a lot of technical difficulties with that construction, as you surely know that. And I think that fine craftsmanship, no matter if it's the machine does the last row stitch or by hand, deserves a lot of respect.
Yeah.
So I would not put a hierarchy between the constructions. If I would probably, there would be some the top of that, but durability, they would be certainly lower than stitch down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love stitch down. For me, it's one of the easy, quote unquote, easy construction. But
Yeah.
then on the other hand, I don't use that heavy leathers like you guys
Right,
do.
right,
So
yeah.
I use sometimes thinner sole leathers than you guys do for
Yeah.
uppers,
Mm-hmm.
especially for women's shoes. I think stitch down is actually, well, certainly part of your heritage, and I don't think anything is wrong with that.
Yeah.
I think just the diversity of the trade,
Yeah.
I mean, should be more out there than,
Yeah.
you know.
One of the early observations I made at Nick's when I was tearing boots down for rebuild is I would see, especially wildland fire boots, I would see dirt and dust below the insole and sometimes into the insole. You know, it was just like a dust bomb when you take it apart. And you know, I could see, and they weren't necessarily all of our boots, but you could see as the welt stitch got wider and wider, or maybe the awl was big, I don't know. But you know, if you're standing in ash or really fine, you know, water, ash, it would kind of seep into the welt, you know, the welt holes into the insole, and you'd have this very dirty rebuild process. And then I would look at these stitch down boots and I would say, gosh, it just seems like there's less dirt and dust and ash and moisture getting in the boot. And that's when I kind of came to the conclusion that if people don't understand fully the benefit of a hand sewn welt, if somebody's going to ask for water resistance and ash resistance or dirt, you know, I'm gonna sell them on a stitch down and explain to them, because it's easy to show it, right? This is sealing, you know, sealing up the forefoot of the boot, and that's kind of the direction we went. But definitely there's a hierarchy, I think, in a lot of these forums about, well, you know, we took some flack from that because we hand welted a lot, and then we went to stitch down, and people perceived it to be kind of a less pure way of making shoes.
Well, I mean, there's not like a pure blood shoemaking, which only applies for, let's say, Lopanka, because that's one of the most difficult one. And then anywhere where you make longer stitches or less material or a little bit more this and that or glue or whatever, then it's not that valuable anymore. So these kind of shoes, I think they have their function.
Yeah.
And the welded can be done beautifully.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Details, everything about details. So, you know, when I talk about shoemaking, and I realize that people are not experts, of course, you just have to find them an example what they understand.
Right.
And the good example is kitchen, because we watch a great amount of kitchen shows on TV. So details, think about your steak. How do you like your steak?
Medium.
Medium. What if the, restaurant owner or whatever, chef, just plays a bit more on that phone and it's going to be overdone?
Yeah.
It's just, like 2 minutes difference?
Right. Yeah.
A very little difference. I mean, everything is the same. Great quality steak, fire, oil, pan, whatever I don't know shit about steak.
Yeah.
But they make it just 2 minutes longer.
Right.
And you get something what you really don't like.
Right. Yeah.
And those are details which do matter. For shoemaking, it's the same.
Yeah.
So when it comes to technology and these experts, quote unquote experts, it's really not that difficult to crash them. I don't think it leads anywhere, so I don't do that. But when you really dig into what they really know about the technology, it turns out that only what they heard about this and that in some video bloggers who are also not a shoemaker, and they heard that story from someone else who misunderstood something. And it turns out that if you actually show them credible proof that they are wrong, they're going to understand, actually, yes, or not.
Right.
So we had this conversation with someone that they were just Norwegian weld.
Yeah.
And that's a welded construction. And usually people know my name in this trade. I'm sorry, bragging myself.
No, that's okay.
But I said, you know what? Okay, show me a Norwegian weld, please. Okay, here it is. And he posted a blog post about the Norwegian weld. And I said, okay, so here's the cross section. This is the Norwegian weld, right? Please show me which one is the welt.
Right.
And then that guy was a gentleman and said, you know what? You're right. There's no welt in here.
There's no welt, yeah.
But I can do the same thing. I have a bigger library about shoemaking than many people have, even books at home.
Right. Yeah.
So I can show you books about pretty much whatever
Yeah.
construction out there, and but there's not much points. I mean,
Right.
you know,
Right.
there are bloggers out there about shoemaking with hundreds of thousands of followers, which
Yeah.
I cannot compete with. And if these people are, interested in shoes and they are interested in the trade, even if they don't know everything perfectly,
Yeah.
fine for me. I mean, at least as they're around supporting the trade. Well, I mean,
Right.
whatever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Final two questions. There's a lot of discussion about sizing, and we at Nix, we have a last library that's extensive, and we've often said the vast majority of people are going to fit within this sizing array, and if you don't, we can usually add to the last if we need to. A lot of people might be disappointed that you don't measure my foot every time. There's no way it can fit perfectly unless you measure my foot exactly. Educate us a bit about about sizing, and you've looked at a lot of feet, and I'm not gonna brag here much, but when you stare at enough dirty socks and feet, we used to kind of have competitions about like, he's probably going to be at a 10E, I think 10.5D just by looking. And then, and we'd play games about how accurate we could be. Talk a bit about, the mystery behind sizing or the lack thereof.
Okay. So my little trick, sorry, brackets. My little trick was I take a look at the customer foot, I take a piece of paper, write down the size, the girth measurements, put it in my pocket, measure the foot. And then if it matches, which was roughly 50% of the cases, I put the sheet in there, the paper in there, and customer like, wow.
Yeah, the magician.
It was so magic. You see it enough, you're gonna tell it's 245. And by heart, but that size 10 is 245 millimeters in there. So if it's a little bit wider, let's add 10 millimeters. I'm gonna be 3 millimeters off maybe.
Yeah.
So let's talk about sizing. So when we talk about footwear sizes or foot sizes, what's the interesting story is that the footwear size is not the foot size.
Yeah.
The footwear, the foot last, is an abstract shape of the foot.
Right.
It's always bigger.
Yeah.
In certain matter. And that extra length is called action length.
Okay.
It's usually like 3 European sizes or 3/4 of an inch.
Right. Yeah.
So when you talk about size, really just figure out what is the last size they can fit in, which is very different for sandals, for pointy shoes, for rounded toes. A rounded is probably the easiest one. And if you talk about standard, which means that you don't do orthopedic shoes, you don't provide shoes for diabetic feet, you can roughly say that you can cover 40-50% of the population with a simple size run.
Right.
If it's well made, comfortable enough.
Okay.
If you start to offer width sizes,
Yeah.
that can go up to maybe 80%,
Yeah.
which is pretty amazing.
Right. Yeah.
But not much higher.
Right.
Normally, I would say that good 30-40% of the population would be the best choice for them if they would get custom-made footwear.
Yeah.
When I made, say, custom-made, properly measured and individual lost, which is, let's just be honest, not going to happen.
Right.
I mean, what's going to happen is they're going to wear very soft, very cushy shoes, and it's going to be accommodate their feet.
Yeah.
So those people who say that you should measure their feet, they're not wrong, but that means a custom last. And a custom last means a lot of digital work with very expensive softwares, maybe a scan, and then you make a custom last, which is logistically a nightmare to do.
Right.
And expensive. So if you tell them, okay, sure, let's do that, you're gonna pay $1,200 more. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, yeah.
Because you need to make a custom. Probably you have to make a custom pattern as well.
Right.
So if they are okay with that, well, yeah, bring it on, sure.
Yeah.
But probably not.
Yeah.
So measurements are really 80% of the cases are you can pinpoint them really well to one size, one width. But then there are people with 2 different size of feet.
Right.
And then what you gonna do with those?
Right.
I mean, you can serve those, right? I mean, you can just pick up 2 different lasts and put back in the shelf.
That's right.
But and that's great actually.
Yeah.
But accommodate every bunion and every of those little deformities, which you can still accommodate, like a hammer toe or something.
Yeah.
You don't want to do everything.
Right.
I mean, then you're going to be an orthopedic shoemaker, which is a whole different trade,
Right.
whole different liability, whole different setup. So I don't think they're wrong to say that, but what are the chances that you can help everybody? So not much.
Yeah, and I think the understanding what you said there is 80% of the population should fit pretty well into standard sizing.
Three different widths.
Yeah, 3 different widths. And yeah, there are the 20% out there, but within that 20%, now if you say, well, yeah, you're right, you know, you are going to be maybe an 11E on your left, and maybe, yeah, you have from an injury, you've got a definite abnormality on your right. Well, try this 12E on, you know, you're still fitting them in a standard size. It's just different, you know, different left to right. And then you get, you know, so that might cover the remaining, you know, 15%. And then you've got this remaining population that definitely needs probably custom footwear, and that can get very expensive, you know.
You know what my little trick is to make good shoes to fit in terms of fitting?
Yeah.
So I had my customer in my workshop and I asked them a certain point, okay, so let's see your foot and take off your shoes. At that point, I don't want to see the foot. I want to see the footwear.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Because that will tell me a lot.
Yeah.
So if they take off the shoes, can I take a look? And I just check inside how they wear it.
Yeah.
If it's worn more in one side than the other, how they wear off the heel. And if it's anywhere the lining is worn, that indicates that there's something wrong with the sizing of that footwear, or more likely the actual foot.
Yeah.
So after I check and if they jump out from a very loose derby, I'm not gonna make them something very tight.
Right.
So many shoemakers say, I'm one of them, that we don't really fit the foot, we fit the mind.
That's brilliant.
So it's important.
I'm gonna make a T-shirt out of that. A bumper
I need
sticker.
a couple of %.
Because we say sizing is 80% psychological and 20% physical. You know, it's what you perceive. It's what you perceive to be a good fitting shoe, and that's where these conversations of perfect fit. You know, I'll just say sizing is actually, it's completely subjective.
And then, you know, how you like to wear your shoes. I mean, me, dad of 3, in the last 8 years, I usually take my shoes on with a baby in my hand.
Yeah.
So how are you going to take the shoes on? Only if you can jump in your shoes,
right?
Right. You don't want to bother with laces, anything. So I wear these worn sports shoes most of the times.
Right. Yeah.
They're great workshop shoes.
Yeah.
And the reason is because I can just step, holding the kid, step in the shoes and walk away.
Right.
Perfect shoes for me.
That's
and they say,
brilliant.
oh, do you wear the shoes as a shoemaker? Yes.
Yeah. No, it's brilliant. Yeah. What are some of your greatest accomplishments?
Oh God, I don't know. Probably that I just mentioned that I have a dad of 3, so and still managed to survive all of them. Well, I mean, I'm not much looking back my accomplishment, honestly. So I'm always looking forward. And I'm one of those guys who doesn't even celebrate birthday. I don't even communicate my birthday, because I don't think it matters. And I'm not gonna. If you check my walls, there's no degree in my wall. There's no master degree in my wall.
Yeah.
I'm happy with my work, and if I'm happy with the last piece of work I do, pattern or actual shoe, I feel accomplished.
Yeah.
But no degree or prizes or medals or whatever won't make me happy if I mess up the last work.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, it's just to be honest, those medals and the things, conversation starters.
Right.
Where did you get this thing? Oh, you really did that kind of sport?
Yeah,
I did. So,
right.
No, I don't care about those really. I just feel happy as a dad. That's actually really something I feel like an accomplishment, even if it's probably more like my wife than mine. But it's just you know the last piece of work. That's the accomplishment I feel happy about.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So we're here. You know, we've been kind of, you know, you're the secret that we didn't want to let out of the bag, you know, because you're so knowledgeable. But you know, you are the one that really developed the Chelsea pattern for us. We've inherited you know, almost 60 years of almost a single pattern set. We just the original Nick Blahusen worked for White's Boots in around the mid 50s. He came in with a similar leather working background. He made his first pair of shoes when he was 14, and he came in and he was the one at White's Boots that said, the pattern should be a little bit modified like this. He was the one that understood patterning. And then he was there for a period of time, and then he started on his own in 1963, and he started with this fresh pattern set that he thought was better. And that has not been modified. I mean, on our 10 8-inch boots
has been copied quite a lot.
But has been copied by some of our neighbors. But when you show somebody the patterning, there isn't perceived rhyme or reason. But as you take a second look at it, you see, it's worked for 60 years and it's worked well. But with the Chelsea boot, I said, let's not start over. We've got this incredible tradition with our logging boots, but let's find somebody that actually knows how to grade, and there's some science behind it. And so we're super grateful. It's one of the best-selling boots right now.
I'm glad to hear that.
And we've got a long backlog, but people are going to start seeing a lot of them, in the next 3-4 months.
You can just stamp my name on the side, maybe.
Oh yeah, we'll just that's right.
Stamp for approval.
Yeah, and I don't want to leak out what we're doing here specifically, but there's a lot more projects we're working on with you, and, and so we're excited. We've had a great productive time. So I just want to say thank you for what you've done to the footwear industry. I hate this term, a dying breed, because I feel like there is a resurgence a bit as people are becoming more aware of how they're spending their money and the quality of what they're buying. It's not the generation of the 90s where we just said, oh wow, it's super cheap.
It's coming back, actually.
Yeah.
I turned down interviews because I knew that the tone will be the dying trade, the lost shoemaker, lost Mohican, whatever. And then said, once actually the television, Hungary was kind of a different system in television. So we had one big TV sponsored by the state, and they called me 2010 that, okay, so we have this interview tomorrow about shoemaking, so please be in the studio at 10. And I knew that the tone will be dying trade.
Right.
So I said no. And sorry, what? I said no. How do you mean no? I'm not gonna be there. Why not? Because I know you're gonna talk about this trade like dying and lost Mohican and whatever, and I'm not up for that.
Right.
Minutes later, producer calls me. They said that you're not gonna come in. No, I'm not. I really hate that kind of narrative.
Yeah.
Because it's coming back, and it might be dying. It's it's difficult these days. So that's the reason we are collectors. We are getting as much as we can, tools and whatever supplies, but we do our best to make it survive. You guys do our amazing job there to make these sturdy American-made boots. I do my best to teach the next generation. I don't want to consider the dying trade.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of promise, and a lot more people are going into the trades now as well. We've got college graduates who have essentially solicited work with us. I've just finished school, and I've seen your videos, and I want to do that.
That's amazing. You inspire a generation.
Yeah, and you just think, are you sure, really? And they're like, absolutely. To work with leather, to use my hands, and and I think there's a lot of positive messaging kind of around that now, where even 10 years ago it was like, you get a degree and maybe sit in a cubicle, but it's better than working with your hands. So it's inspiring, and we like to believe that it's far from dying, and we've got a 6-month backlog of people that are here's our money, and I want good quality footwear, because the alternatives are just not working out. So
that's why it's important to educate them. So they need to see the difference between something which looks like something which is sold for $75 a pair.
Right.
Because I can tell you that one pair of boots has more money just for the upper than $75.
Yeah.
And something $75 a pair not going to be a great quality.
Right.
So if people understand the differences, then that's the key, not to die out. That's the key to
Right.
survive, to educate the customers.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so thank you for doing this.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. So, Marcell, we're grateful to have been here. You've been incredible, an incredible host. We love this workshop. I wish I could be here for 2 weeks, but
Well, come back.
I've got a wife and 5 kids that are excited for me to be home. But and for everybody listening, we want to thank you for tuning in, and we'll definitely catch you on the next one.